having a master result where we were doing a lot of things on the field, this was a way of testing ourselves. Basically, what we were teaching is really something that could happen. So open source for us meant a lot of visibility, meant a way of giving trust first to anyone that is willing to play with us, basically, and say, we have here the technology, so you can try it, you can play with that, and you decide if this is right for you or not. And then because we have all the expertise, then open source is a great place to, to expose all of this understanding and knowledge. So for instance, being here is a big part of this strategy, is being part of FOSSASIA. Thanks to all of you, and then you're listening about this. So basically, open source is a great catalyst to move things forward.
Yeah. Okay, for open user, I think there are two challenges. The first challenge is open user has grown up to be a very huge community. We have got involved around 17,000 developers. And every day we have active developers around 4,000 developers. So it's huge. So how to maintain, how to manage the huge community, that is a very, very big challenge. So we try to do our best to make the community to be running smoothly and don't be any problem. Operating system is very basic software. It cannot have any problem. So that is I think the first challenge. The second challenge is how to make our partners and our customers to get benefit from the community. They need to, the community and the release, the output should be valuable, right, for the partner and the customer. So how to make our customer and partner to get more and more profit, and also link with different companies. Daniel, how to we benefit from each other. That is very, I think, challenging question for both all of the open source community.
Yeah. Okay. So in the case of Ethereum, like Ethereum is a protocol, and all of the code is open source. The community is open source. But it's like the internet, so you can have projects that are built on top of it that are or are not open source. And I think one challenge we have is like most of the projects today are open source, and there's a lot of benefits to do it that way. But there are some projects that launch that are not open source, that are closed source. And I think our challenge is to educate users on why it's important that projects should use projects that are open source. Namely for security, right? Like security, like if you're launching a project, like let's say a wallet, a crypto wallet, and it's closed source, they'll oftentimes try to say like there's security through obscurity. Like you can't understand what the code is, like you can't hack it, which is not true, and quite the opposite. Like if there is a wallet that is open source, people have seen the code, can have verified the code, and it's been around for a while, it's likely to be more secure than a wallet that is closed source. And I think our challenge is educating people to make sure that they are using wallets, using applications that are actually open source.
I think for ExpressVPN, we've benefited hugely from the open source community. When I talk about how we created Lightway, I start off by, people always say, well, why don't you like WireGuard? And we say, well, actually, no, WireGuard was the inspiration for this. WireGuard came along and showed everybody, like, VPNs could be fast, they could be cool, they could be modern. But at the same time, Lightway was grounded in OpenVPN. This is a project that's been around for over 20 years, and many people who grew up on VPNs open source used OpenVPN. Why? It was open, it was secure, it was easy to understand, you could build on it. And in the case of ExpressVPN and many other businesses, large businesses have been built on this promise. The third thing I always talk about is Lightway is secured by wolfSSL. It's an open source TLS library. So at Express, we don't touch any of the crypto because we're not cryptographers and it would be bad to touch it. So we're able to create this secure platform because we can leverage other open source. And lastly, the beauty of open source means that when we create Lightway, we can be we can basically focus on the things that we care about. We can be opinionated. So when we built Lightway, we designed it specifically to solve the problems that we were seeing. And for many people, they will have different challenges, and Lightway won't be useful for them. But for others, it's a common use case, and maybe this solves problems for them too. So in all of kind of like the pillars of Lightway and the project that we built, open source is through and through the only way it was possible, and the only way that we could do something like this.
Great. Okay, so I want to do a bit of a topic change here now. I'm gonna maybe open the Pandora box on the buzzwords, and you guys, I want to see your perspective on AI. So like you guys bring different points of view. You guys integrating AI into operating systems, which is pretty amazing. Giving data out there for many systems. Like how do you guys maybe enable projects to use this data for running their own analytics? Or even like decentralizing, and how do you guys see AI? We had a talk recently about how all these chatbots, ChatGPT, and all those are or are not considered open source. How do you guys see FOSS enabling this AI within the systems in a business-oriented way that is still remaining open source? What can we consider open source, right? Like, because as we saw before, like sometimes you don't have the data, it's not open source, or how do you guys see FOSS enabling this AI trend that is happening?
Yeah. I'll go first again.
Yeah.
So being not an expert in AI, that's the first disclaimer here. So my feeling is that, well, first of all, if you think about the last 20 years, so we've had certain waves. We had data science, we have data engineering, we have cloud, we have blockchain, crypto, we have now AI. So AI we go through this wave, and then other things will happen. So I would say, first of all, this is a new trend. So there might be a bubble in other cases, and that's all right. That's okay. Going to the specific question of the danger of AI, and from the open source perspective, and that this was this keynote this morning. Part of the problem is basically that we don't have access to the data. You may have access to the source code, but then what is this for? You don't have the data to train the AI, and second, you don't have the power, cloud power or machinery power to run this. Basically, you cannot really use that AI software and this software. So then, the question probably is what's the definition of, or the proper definition of open source AI that we had a discussion before, and the OSI, the Open Source Initiative, they are running with Stefano Maffoli as executive director of the OSI. They are running this podcast, and now they are trying to define what open source AI means. So I think that the two main dangers are this one, the lack of power computing, because basically only large corporations or big governments can afford this, and the others basically have the right data to train all this. How to make all these things open or accessible, that's the risk.
So for AI, definitely it will change the world greatly. For operating system, it's a very traditional AI, right? But you can see I do some show the AI can change the operating system interaction very greatly. So definitely it will change a lot. But the problem is, for example, the Euler Copilot, we have to do a very nice project. But the problem is we can open source the code. But what about the data set? Because some of the data set is not included not owned by the project, or even by our OpenEuler or foundation. So we can use it to the training, but should we release or open source the data set? That is a very sensitive and important question for all of the AI open source. So basically, for my idea, I think for the open source around AI, I support that we can open source the framework. For example, the key framework, a lot of the infrastructure, that is okay. But for the data side, I think we can keep some of the data side to be private, to allow the customer or the developer or the companies to get some useful business-friendly use case for them to tell their business. So I think that this should be combined with the private, some of the private data set and the open source framework. That may be a good way. I'm not sure. I just gave the proposal for this class.
So from the crypto perspective, I think there's a lot of ideas around how crypto and AI interact. Like maybe a lot of people here have seen a lot of like crypto AI tokens. I think all of those are bullshit. So I'd be careful with those. I think one thing that's cool about crypto is you can kind of like program. You can create you can use incentives and you can program incentives natively. Like there is value inherent in crypto, and you can use crypto to program these incentives and sort of program interesting applications of those, or like programming game theory to some degree. And I think the most interesting application of AI x crypto, AI interactions with crypto, is like AI becoming maybe like agents within crypto applications. So in the case of maybe like prediction markets, where you're trying to predict something in the future, maybe you can have AI as agents that are participating in these prediction markets instead of humans. And I think ideally we all want open source AI. Will we get that? I'm not sure. But even if we don't, maybe there's some way where we can use crypto to sort of be like the guardrails of AI and sort of program incentives that we would like to see come out of these. So yeah, I think that those are kind of interesting, much more than the tokens.
I think AI is one of those technologies, like any powerful technology. You can do great and amazing things, but the power that gives you can cut both ways, and it can be used for bad things as well. It's just the nature of the beast. And the problem with it from a privacy perspective is, and we saw this a bit with ChatGPT, where a lot of private information got leaked, where you could trick the model into telling you things that in theory it shouldn't even know. And people then started complaining and being concerned that, hang on, this thing is taking my conversations and doing stuff with it. The thing is, in order to make these models better and more powerful, they need data from somewhere. So someone needs to feed these things data. So is it going to be my data? Is it going to be your data? Whose data is it going to be? It's got to come from somewhere. And it's a bit like the old thing with nuclear power stations. Everybody wants, well not everybody, a lot of people want nuclear power. No one wants it next to them. And so this is going to be the problem, I think, with AI. In theory, everybody wants it to be open, everybody wants the data to be there so that everybody can understand it, it can be equitable. But at the same time, those same people aren't necessarily willing to contribute all of their kind of personal information into this and trust it. So I think we'll see over probably the next year or so a very interesting twist in where this data comes from, how it's managed, how you protect it. Because there's going to be a lot of conversations that you don't mind if AI has access to it, and you're willing to contribute it. But there's certain things that you might want to keep out of that conversation. And so I think we'll see more fine-grained controls or concepts or ideas of how we can give the general stuff to AI, but certain things that we can withhold, and how we can do that in a general way to kind of protect our privacy, but still allow these models to evolve. Otherwise, we're going to get to a point where the models effectively stop evolving, and that's not going to help anyone. But at the same time, private data, once it's out there, you can never claim it back. So I think it's going to be a very interesting space, especially over the next year or so, as governments try to regulate and try to understand this new thing that they've created, and how it's going to impact and play with the world.
Yeah, so that brings a very interesting point. the point of data, right? Like, where do you guys see, like following on this topic, where do you guys see data? So there's this perspective where data should be kept private, should be kept open. Where do you guys see this regulation coming from? Should it be like governments coming from these regulations, agencies, like should communities be the ones like bringing up this openness or not, right? Like it's a right for privacy there, like certain data, like if it's medical data, right? That is a key point where I know, for example, in the blockchain ecosystem, everything happens in a very decentralized way, like decisions are made in a very decentralized way, right? So there's no government decision or thing. So I think that we have like a very good different perspectives here. So if you guys can add some on how you guys think. This is not an easy topic, but I think that's why it's so interesting.
Yeah, maybe starting off with the blockchain and more so the crypto perspective. Like there's one type of one cryptographic primitive that's become more popular recently called zero knowledge proofs, which I think are quite interesting. And like essentially what this primitive allows you to do is it allows you to prove that something is true without revealing why it is true or what exactly is true. And so with this, you can like this is what we're starting to use within the crypto industry to create private applications, like private applications that are simultaneously like verifiable that they're done correctly and public, but without revealing like the data inputs that were provided into them. And so this concept, this primitive of zero knowledge proofs, turns out to be really powerful for creating like private, like data privacy, while still allowing you to do different functionality with it. And I think like the next iteration of this is probably going to be like FHE, fully homomorphic encryption. MPC also plays a role here a little bit, but I think zero knowledge proofs are the most interesting for me right now. And I know in Vietnam actually there's a big community of zero knowledge proofs. Like a lot of people who are working and developing and researching on zero knowledge proofs here.
Very, very interesting.
So just to mention what we have here Harris PI from the Verify AI Foundation. So I may suggest that probably if you would like to learn more about the ethics of AI, talk to them. They are working on this problem specifically. Then regarding to the data, we've seen specifically that there is now friction between what AI companies are gathering and scrapping from the web and the copyright issues on how they are using that information then to expose. So basically, it seems that by using certain, for instance, I'm not sure about ChatGPT, but these chatbots, and you exposing that information, you might be breaking somehow the copyright because you don't know where basically that's coming from. And because Gen AI is building on top of this existing knowledge, that's part of the problem somehow. So there are two things here. It's part of the data itself, so basically what's the data that you are using to train, but then if you have the rights to use the data, basically to do that training of the AI, which is the other point. Going to Xiongwei comment before, I totally agree with you that there should be first probably something public and accessible to everyone in terms of data, for the data training, and then of course you can improve or have a very customized version for you within your company with your own data, which is of course must remain private because it's your data. But from a public perspective, this is using first public data and second public knowledge and going to the discussion of open source, then probably all these flows should be